For a pretty long time, it has been discussed many times on how strong is Underverse, and so today I'll bring my own opinion into this subject and see how strong is the Underverse verse really is. Big shout out to Snaz who helped me a lot on the scaling. The link to that channel will be in the description. I won't focus too much to the inverse scaling in this video, but more so to the crossverse scaling. Only bring the inverse scaling when I'll need to. Starting off, at the very least, Underverse is easily reaching those urban level of powers. Very weak feats such as Cross destroying an ink wall is calculated to building level, and pretty much any character that scale around him, such as Fel, pretty much the entire XTale cast and others, scale to that level of strength. The stronger characters such as Error, Ink, and Fresh Ink are all around the city block level because of Ink taking multiple blasters into his face and Error being able to hurt Ink. You could also go deeper into the scaling, considering how Cross kill X Metadon, who can make a city block level explosion, and pretty much everybody scales one way or another to Cross, making everyone city block level. There's one feat that I should also bring up, but no really scales to it because of the nature of the attack, and that is Dream's Light Explosion. I've seen some calculation that only takes into consideration the size of the explosion on the very specific camera shot we see it, but if you take the full context of the fight, the explosion is much bigger than you think. The light explosion blasted away Cross negative domain, which if you take its full size, make the explosion go from building level to small town level, which is pretty insane, but no one scales to it since the explosion is caused by an attack made only to arm Nightmares specifically, since it is created from positive feelings. As for speed, it's actually surprising how fast the verse is. In terms of travel speed, any character that are relative to Cross have transonic to supersonic travel speed, as Cross is able to cause sonic boom with his movements, which can go anywhere from Mach 1.007 to Mach 1.12, which is consistent with X-Gaster stopping Cross Blaster, which was calculated to Mach 1.30. Now, the main meat of Underverse speed lies in their combat speed. In the extra scene 2, error strings tangle every universe in only 2 seconds. We know that there is thousands of universes within the dual sphere, so if we take into consideration the distance between universes, that feat can be calculated to hypersonic plus to high hypersonic plus. Any character that can keep up with Ink Sense would have those level of speed, as it can react and grab error strings. And as of now, the greatest speed feats that we have for Underverse comes from Swap Sense, who can move faster than Excalibur's knife, which was calculated to sub-relativistic. With that said, I think it's time to actually address the reason why I make this video in the first place. So let me address the elephant in the room.
Let me tell you something. I don't want to play with you.
For context, in the second extra scene, Error tangles every universe with his blue strings, and we later on see at the end of season 1 that Error destroyed the multiverse, and that feat is consistently described as the destruction of the multiverse in every alternate universes. It is also consistent with Error Sense to be able to destroy AUs, as he stated himself to be able to destroy everything, to have destroyed AUs before, and is internally acknowledged to be able to destroy AUs. Despite that feat happening, many people interpret it as a chain reaction, because Error rather messed up with the code of the universe, and that the papers floating in the dual sphere are not the actual universes. The main argument for Error actually doing code manipulation instead of raw destruction comes from the universe glitching by the touch of Error's blue strings. However, we see multiple times in Underverse that glitching effect isn't necessarily caused because of code manipulation, such as the Cross event so consistently glitching at the touch of Error's blue strings, while there is no evidence supporting Error was trying to destroy it through code manipulation. In fact, the most likely interpretation goes at the opposite of it, since soul destruction is rather done through physical means and not through code manipulation. It would be safe to correlate Error's glitching effect to code destruction only if there was implication of code destruction behind the times this effect appears, with error strings which there isn't. The instances where a glitch effect is given when there is code alteration is most of the time with the override power, so it would be fallacious to equate the same property of glitching effects caused by the override to the cases of error. More so, there are instances where this glitch effect appears in the context of damages, such as Chara glitching when his soul is vanishing. More so, we do have instances where something is destroyed through code, and at every instances, the said object is consistently disappearing with a glitching effect. But in case of Error's feat, that effect wasn't used, which make the destruction through code manipulation interpretation less likely. And if Error was doing code manipulation, he would have to pull his strings because the AUs would have collapsed by themselves, making Error's action in 0.4 even less likely with the code manipulation interpretation. The entire argument for Error using code manipulation to destroy the multiverse is basing itself on timeline collapsing when there is a big change in their code. Now, the argument is already making the assumption that how timelines work should also be the same for AUs, making the argument less likely. We have no information of AU work functioning like how timelines do, so we cannot assume that they work the same. Adding on, the argument used Underswap's timeline and Underverse as evidence for big change in the story equaling destruction. However, what causes destruction on the Underswap timeline is the corruption done by XTale, which is implied by X-Office, and not because of the story or the code being altered. In Underverse, Cross didn't add the override power and couldn't do the same action that Chara did, which led to the Underswap timeline collapsing. Heck, the best example of a timeline having an altered story but remaining intact is Classic Sen's timeline. He won against Frisk, which made him broke from his timeline, and it only made it restart, not even collapse on itself. To make it even deeper, if we assume Underverse Error Sense follows perfectly his canon counterpart, Error Sense has the ability to manipulate code without the help of his strings, so it is even less consistent for him to use code manipulation with his strings. Now, as for the claim that the papers in the Dollar Sphere aren't the AUs but gateways, it bases itself on multiple points such as the island shown in XTale 0, the original Dollar Sphere from the canon Ink Sense story, and Error Sense calling the Dollar Sphere a skin of the multiverse. For the first argument, the island aren't the same thing as the papers. We do see Dame's shape into papers in XTale 0, but that isn't enough to prove that they are the same thing. Just like how an object A transforms to object B, it doesn't mean that these objects are the same nor share the same properties. As for Inktail's Dollar Sphere, Underverse doesn't have to follow Inktail's version of the Dollar Sphere one by one. The scan is used to support the interpretation that the papers are actually doors leading to the AUs. It would make sense to use the original Dollar Sphere to support AUs gateway being gateways if it was shown while it's implied in Underverse. If there is no implications nor actual evidence that the AUs are gateways within Underverse, then there is no reason to use the original Dollar Sphere as supporting evidence, as you would first need to prove that Underverse Dollar Sphere actually follows what the original does. The argument tries to support itself with Error calling the Dollar Sphere a skin. However, the use of the word skin doesn't even imply nor influence the idea that what is floating in the Dollar Sphere are the AU, as a skin can be a natural layer of the body they cover, just like how our human skin is directly linked and tied to our body, which supports the idea that papers are actually AUs. Heck, the use of the word skin is one of the worst words possible if your intention is to convey that the papers are actually gateways, because the skin has a closer connection to the thing it is bounded to, unlike a door or a gateway. The argument also draws out the implication that because the papers are skin of AUs, they are separated from what the AUs actually are, but that isn't supported at all by the narrative, because if the papers were just skin separated from the AUs, Error's feats in 0.4 would have any impact, since the thing he destroyed are separate from the AUs. And if you're making the claim that Error's feat was a chain reaction, like destroying the papers destroyed the universes as a chain reaction, you would need to prove that the papers are actually separated from the AUs themselves, which is again not supported by the narrative. So what? Destroying the papers caused a chain reaction that destroyed the AUs? This isn't supported at all. Just say that the papers are actually AUs, bro. And before addressing my actual argument and scale, if we were to use Inktail's version of the Dollar Sphere with its full context, it literally goes in the advantage of the papers being the actual AUs, and that is thanks to the HTML explanation of the Dollar Sphere. The Dollar Sphere is stated to be the CSS of the multiverse, and the multiverse being the HTML. If Error only targeted the CSS, it would have impacted the HTML, which makes the chain reaction argument even less plausible, because since Error's feat had an actual impact on the multiverse, it would be more likely to draw the conclusion that he targeted the HTML. And one debunks the entire idea that the papers aren't actually alternate universes is the Underverse master post describing the Dollar Sphere as counting the alternate universes. And their series consistently describes the papers as the actual universes. Now that we know that Error Sense actually destroyed the alternate universes, we need to take a look at the cosmology to really understand how much of an impressive feat that is. Alternate universes are composed of countless timelines that all follow the same story. Each timelines are separate space-time continuums, as the alteration or destruction of a timeline doesn't affect the other, as evident by the different alternate versions of Classic Sense that all come from alternate timelines. Every choices and action lead to the creation of an alternate timeline, and those same alternate timelines have their own branches, easily making the amount of timelines within an alternate universe countless, to the least countable amount reaching into the thousands, easily making an alternate universe reaching into the multiversal tier. But it's not all compared to the entire scope of an alternate universe. Alternate universes are described to be stories by themselves. Just like our timelines are stories in the sense that they have their own set of events and course of events, it would make a universe also have a set history and course of event. All of these timelines are located and exist within the alternate universe. Within the course of event that a universe follow, the timeline will be part of that story. However, we know that timelines have their own flow of time, and that timelines getting destroyed as evident by the different genocide routes, altered and created is part of the universe story. Despite being separated, timelines are connected by causality and to exist within one bigger whole that is a universe. All of this to point out the existence of a higher temporal axis that tracks the evolution of every timeline and the global evolution of an entire universe, i.e. the story of a universe. What supports this interpretation is the override button, which is stated to be a greater power than resets, which can already manipulate timeline space-time, being able to erase every timeline within a universe. The way this ability is visually explained is through showing the branching timeline disappearing in the reverse order of the appearance, which would imply erasure of said timelines through time manipulation, i.e. reverting back to a previous state of the universe where they didn't existed. This is further supported as every use of the override button revert back Chara and Frisk into children form, so we can conclude that every time Gaster used the override button to reset the XTale universe, it used time manipulation. With that in mind, what supports the idea of a higher temporal axis is Gaster using the override button to remove Chara's timeline that was created by his resets. After the override button is used, it reversed Chara and Frisk into children, and with the information the overrides used time manipulation to reset XTale, we can come to the conclusion that it reverted back XTale to a previous state where Chara's timeline didn't exist. All these evidence pointed for the existence of a higher temporal dimension that owns all timeline and throughout all of their evolution as part of a universe story, making any character capable of destroying an alternate universe low, complex, multiversal. I've already explained how it is consistent for Era to be able to destroy AUs on his own, but it should be noted that his feats would also scale to his physical stats. The same blue string he used to destroy AUs were used against French Ink to tangle him in an attempt to kill him, but French Ink fully tanked the attack, which would mean that French Ink has low complex multiversal durability. This is significant because Era's blaster were able to harm him, and Era can tank his own blaster, which will make Era scale to low complex multiversal on his own, and this physically. Of course, every character that are relative to Era and those who can harm him would scale to this tier, making pretty much most of the cast low complex multiversal with sub-relativistic speed. To go briefly to the acts and abilities section, the XTale cast has the ability to create pocket reality thanks to their negative emotions. A few characters have the ability to manipulate code, with shapes, object, structure, living beings, and alternate universes, which each code being unique to its own universe, and Possessor, which you could interpret code being a type 2 concept, giving those with code manipulation conceptual manipulation. With the exception of Gaster, Battle Error is, in my opinion, the character with the best abilities, as he notably has durability negation, as he can target someone through their code, as he did for Gaster. And to finish, there's the override button. It has a lot of abilities such as subjective reality, causality manipulation, as it can stop the creation of branching timeline in XTale, time manipulation, transmutation, and of course, reality warping. For offensive abilities, while there is a lot of them, they won't work on people who don't have a specific code or don't belong to the Underverse multiverse, so no point in bringing this up. In conclusion, the majority of the cast scaled directly or indirectly to Era's feat of destroying the multiverse, which we know AU houses countless timeline alongside a higher time axis, making the verse 5-dimensional. Every characters are comparable to Swap Sense, have sub-relativistic speed, and for abilities, a few characters have conceptual manipulation on a 5-dimensional scale due to code manipulation and pocket manipulation for XTale characters. I hope you liked this video. If there are any points on which you disagree, tell me in the comment section. Until then, bye bye.